Hello, advanced social psychology students. My name is Mary Dezindalet, and I'm the instructor for this course. The purpose of this video is to go through with you the syllabus so that you'll have a really good idea of what the course expectations are for the spring semester of 2026. So as you can see, the title of this course is Advanced Social Psychology. It's Psychology 5583. For this spring semester of 2026, the CRN number is 26183. And the course is online. We won't meet face-to-face even once. My name is Mary Dezindalet, and I retired from Cameron University, the psychology department, in May of 2024. I taught there full-time beginning 1993, so I was there for over 30 years and was chair of the department for, I think, a decade, many of those years. But since I've retired, I'm only teaching one class every semester. And this semester, it is Advanced Social Psychology online. So because of that, I don't really have an office on campus. Nance Boyer 1023 is actually the psychology department office. So the best way to get in touch with me is by emailing. If you email marydz@cameron.edu, then I'll respond to your email usually within 24 hours, but definitely within 48 hours. And if you feel like we need to meet face-to-face to talk, we can meet through Zoom. So we can do an appointment through Zoom pretty easily, and we can talk that way. Again, the phone number here of 580-581-2360 is the psychology department office, and I'm not really in the office. So the best way is to email me and set up an appointment where we could talk through Zoom. But I do look forward to getting to know each of you. This is, I think, the third time I've taught this class online. Last semester, I taught it as a hybrid, and I've been able to, it feels anyway, like I've been able to get good relationships with the students and get to know all of you. And I look forward to the same thing happening this semester. So some good news for you about the textbook. It is free. Yay. It's Principles of Social Psychology, the first international HSP edition. There's links to it in the Blackboard course shell in several places, and it's free, which is really nice. There may be a previous edition of the text, but I would prefer for you to use the one that I have the link to in the material. In order to perform well in this class, or even to do it at all, you're going to have access to some kind of PowerPoint. You're going to have a really good internet connection and be able to get to the Blackboard Ultra really well. I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to use your computer rather than a cell phone as much as possible. A place where you could use your cell phone to access the information fairly well is when you're listening to my video lectures. Most of the video lectures, even though I'm going through a PowerPoint slide, you'll be able to understand it without the use of the PowerPoint slides. And so I think the PowerPoint slides just add a little interest, but it's not necessary. And so if you walk or go running, or you're driving in the car, maybe driving's not the best idea, but when you've got times, you could absolutely listen to some of the lectures through your cell phone while you're doing other activities. But for a lot of the course, like when we're using Harmonize to do the video discussions, and when you're taking the exams, and when you're reading the articles and you're submitting the summaries, you're going to need to be on your laptop or on a computer for those things. And you're going to need, especially when you're taking the exams, to have a really strong internet connection. So that's some of the technical things that you'll need. Let's start talking about the required course assignments. I know that's one of the things I was also, when I do take and when I have taken online classes, it's what I kind of key in on. So there'll be a syllabus quiz that will be due I would love to have it due the last day of the first week of classes, which is January 18th. However, you can actually enroll in this class after that date. I believe you can enroll in the class until January 20th. So I'm having the syllabus quiz due by January 21st, especially for people who join the class after the first week is already over. It's only worth 5 points, but it's a really good way for you to test how well you can take exams and quizzes through Blackboard Ultra. And I don't know about you, but I would feel much better having done a quiz like that, that then when I came to the test, I'd know, okay, I know what this is going to look like and feel like. There's going to be 3 exams total, 2 unit exams. And each of the unit exams have 50 multiple choice questions. The exams are open book, open notebook, open notes, open Google, you open PowerPoint slides, open lectures, you can use anything you want except for each other. So you can't have another human being help you on it. You have to do it alone, but you can do it using any resource that you have. The first exam, the Unit 1 exam, is during the week that goes from February 24th to March 2nd. And then the second exam, the Unit 2 exam, is the week of April 7th to April 13th. Now, the second exam, the Unit 2 exam, must be proctored. Cameron University has a rule that every online class has to have at least one proctored exam. It's how we, it's one of the ways that we meet the requirement of making sure that the people who are in our class really are the people who are taking the class. When you go to take a proctored exam, you have to show some form of ID, and so that's how we use it. If you're going to take it on Cameron's campus, it's real easy to sign up for the proctored exam. If not, you can take it. I believe we have ProctorU. But if you go to the Cameron's testing center site, they'll give you all kinds of information about how to take proctored exams off campus. Okay, so the exam, Unit 1 exam, will close at 11:59 on the last day of the week, March 2nd. You'll have 2 hours to take the exam. I highly recommend, cannot recommend strongly enough, don't wait till March 2nd to take the exam. You have a whole week. And if anything goes wrong, your computer goes down, you get sick, you won't be able to make up the exam because you have that whole week to do it. So the only way that you would be able to make up the exam would be if from February 24th until March 2nd, you were in the hospital like the whole week, which is pretty rare that that happens. So I highly, highly recommend that you go to take the exam earlier in the week so that if something goes wrong, like you do get sick, you can take it a couple of days later. Or if you end up with a computer problem, you have another day to troubleshoot. So the first exam, February 24th to March 2nd, and then the second exam, April 7th to April 13th. And the second exam is the one that needs to be proctored. The first one does not. We'll also have a comprehensive final exam. And the comprehensive final exam is not multiple choice. In fact, I'm going to give you 3 essay questions, and they're very applied. Like, I think one year after COVID, I did something, or when we were in COVID, I did something like, what would happen if the mayor contacted you and said, what could we do to make Latonians be more likely to wear masks? So whether you are for masks or not for masks, it doesn't matter. It's basically a persuasion, attitude change type task. And we're asking, like, what would you do to help Latonians follow this rule of wearing the mask? And so you can see you're taking everything that you've learned in the course and applying it to this real world problem. So I'm going to give you 3 of these different real world problems. You choose 2 of them. One of them you don't have to do. And you'll write for an hour on each of them. They're each worth 50 points, so 100 points total. And the exam will open up during finals week on Tuesday, May 5th at 12:01 a.m. and it closes at noon on Friday, May 8th. And sometimes that noon closing makes me nervous because the other two exams close at 11:59 on the last day that they're open. But Cameron University has all of the final exams ending on noon on Friday, May 8th. And then later on Friday is the hooding ceremony and the graduation. So I see why they close it at noon. So again, I would not wait till Friday to be taking the final exam. So the final exam, you'll have 2 hours to do it. I highly recommend that you spend, like, set a timer for yourself and you spend 1 hour for the first question and then 1 hour for the second question. I know in the past I had a couple of students who, oh my gosh, they spent almost like an hour and 45 minutes on one of the questions and wrote phenomenally great essays. They got like all 50 points. But then on the second essay, they ran out of time. And so they ended up overall not doing that well in the final because they only got like 25 points on the second essay. So I highly recommend that you set a timer. You do the first essay, stop after an hour, then do the second essay and stop after an hour. I do want to give you a heads up that not when I taught it this fall, but when I taught it last spring, or it might have even been the fall before that, there were a couple students in the teaching evaluations, I read those very carefully, who said that they felt like the final exam was very stressful because it was such a time, it felt like they needed more than 2 hours to do it. And so I just want you to know that I do not want this to be a stressful experience for you, but I also don't want you spending hours and hours and hours on this final exam. So I've given you an hour for each one because I think if I gave you 3 hours for each one, you could use all 3 hours. If I gave it, like, just opened it and you could do it anytime, have as much time as you want, I think some of you could, like, you could spend a day trying to figure it out. And your essay would just get better and better and better, but I don't want that much of a time investment. So that's why it's like an hour for the first one, an hour for the second one, and you do them back to back. You actually have 2 hours to finish it. And so you decide how you want to allocate the time. I recommend you allocate an hour for each one, but it's not meant to be stressful. Like, it's really meant to, I don't want to take up much more time than that. So there are your 3 exams. They're each worth 100 points. So 300 points of the course are these 3 exams. The first 2 being multiple choice, the last one being comprehensive final and essay questions. We're also going to read you're going to read 8 empirical articles, and you're going to summarize them for this course. And so these are all like recent articles in the last 5 years in really great social psychology journals. And one of the things that I really want you to master in this class is get used to reading the empirical research, because the lectures, probably 10 years from now, anything I taught you in there, a lot of that's not going to even be valid anymore. It will, or some of it might not be. So the way you really stay on top of things in psychology is to continually read the journals. So you have to get good at reading these journal articles. So you're going to read 8 of them for this class. Each one of them is worth 10 points, and they're due at 11:59 of the last day of the week that you have to read them. So there's one due February 2nd, one February 9th, one February 16th. Then we'll have an exam. So then the next one will be March 9th, March 23rd, March 30th. You'll have the Unit 2 exam. Then there'll be one due April 20th and one due April 27th. Okay. Now, after we read these article summaries, we're going to actually discuss them. When I teach this class face to face, we sit around in a circle and we discuss them. And one student, or sometimes if we got lots of people in the class, people will do it in pairs. They'll present the article to the class, sort of remind them what it was about. And then that person leads the discussion of the article. And so because this is an online class, we're going to have the articles through Harmonize, which is just a video program. It's very easy to use. I've used it for many semesters. No student has ever complained going Harmonize is too hard. So what's going to happen is after you finish summarizing the article, you're going to think of a question that might be useful when we go to discuss the article the following week. So it might be like how you might apply this to the real world or to a different situation, or if there's a limitation you notice in it. So for example, if the article used a chatbot or something in France, and what would happen if they did this in the United States now? What would happen if they did it with students who are computer science majors? Would it be different than with the general population or older people? You can, and you think that that would be worthy of discussing in class. I noticed last semester, a lot of the discussion that we had was very applied, like, how can we use this to make the world a better place in Latin or in my job or when I'm teaching my kids different skills that they want to have. So I'd like you to write that question in Blackboard, and whoever is leading the article discussion that week will look, and everyone has access to it, but we'll look at the discussion questions and pick the ones that they like the best, and those are the ones that we'll talk about during class. And so the discussion questions are worth 5 points each. I actually gave you one night off. So even though we're reading, or 1 week off, even though we're reading 8 articles and you're summarizing 8 articles, you only have to write 7 discussion questions. So if one time you're reading the article and you're like, I don't know what we're going to talk about when we talk about this, you then just make that the week that you skip. Then you will participate in these discussions through Harmonize, and each participation, or you can earn up to 10 points for participating in the discussion. I want you to make at least 2 videos as though you're talking around the room. Do you know what I mean? If you think when we do this class face to face, we spend about an hour talking about each article. So if there's 15 people in the class, they're not talking a whole bunch, but everyone's filling in some of that time. And so I don't want you to just use the time so that you fill in a certain amount of time. So I don't give you a time limit. But say what you need to say if that you think would be beneficial to add to what we're discussing. And you'll be doing these discussions weeks 4, 5, 6, then we'll have the first exam. Then weeks 9, 10, and 11, we'll have the second exam, and then weeks 14 and 15. Okay, now one of these articles you're going to lead. Now, again, there's 15 articles. Right now, as of today is Friday, January 9th, there's 11 people enrolled in the class. So if that's the case, I'll probably lead the discussion for the remaining 4, or I'll open it up if someone wants to get extra credit. They could lead 2 discussions, class discussions, but it's a lot of work to lead the class discussions. There may be some more students that will enroll in the class, and that's how it'll go. If we end up with more than 15 students enrolled in the class, then at least one of the articles you'll need to discuss in pairs. But I don't think that that's likely, given that there's only 11 right now. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is to go through the course, all the course shells, the course Blackboard shells, go through each of the units and look at the 15 articles, skim them, and pick which article do you want to lead. And you can choose it because you're like, ooh, this article seems the most interesting to me, and I'd love to talk about this. Or you might do it based on your work schedule, because the week that you lead the discussion, first of all, you'll post your video. Usually students do it with a PowerPoint presentation. They sort of mimic the way that I do the lectures, where they're talking about all the main elements of the article. They're summarizing it so that someone who didn't read the article would be able to understand it based on your summary. So it's quite a bit of detail. You'll need at least 15 minutes. Usually they're between 15 and 20 minutes to talk about it. And they do the video through Harmonize and you post it. So it takes a while to do that art, to record it, to figure out what you're going to say, record it, and then post it. Then during the week, you're listening to what your classmates are posting. And your classmates are each going to be posting about 2 videos about it. And so you're going to be leading the discussion. So if you notice students are kind of getting away from the main topic, you can bring them back. You're in charge that whole week of leading the discussion. So you're going to want to pick a week where you aren't on vacation, or you don't have a big conference that you're attending for work, or your child is in a big play and you're going to have a lot going on that week. So you may choose the article based on, ooh, this would be a great article, or you may choose it based on your schedule and go, that would be a good week for me to do it. So that's the leading, and that is worth 100 points. That is worth as much as one of the exams. So let's look at the calendar now. So week 1, you're probably watching this video now, between January 12th and January 28th. During this module 1 and week 1, I'm just giving you an introduction to the course, and I'm going to teach you how to write one of the article summaries. As you know, you're going to be writing 8 article summaries. So we're going to do one sort of together during week 1. There's a very short article about SQ5R that you'll read. It's like 3 pages long. And then you'll watch a video of when I talk about what I want in each of the article summary template. Then you'll read the article and you'll fill it out. And then there's a key there that you can check your answers with. So you'll really get a good idea of what I'm looking for these article summaries. You don't have to turn this one in. This is just one for you to do so that you know how to do the ones that you will have to submit. Also, by the end of the week, ideally January 18th, I'd like you to introduce yourself in Harmonize so that everyone gets a chance of making sure they don't have a problem in Harmonize. And so you'll just introduce yourself. You'll say, there's a link there, you click on it, and you'll say where you did your undergraduate work, what your major was, what you're planning to do after you graduate, and something that's interesting about you that you want the rest of us to know. Technically, those are not due and then you also want to do the syllabus quiz. And all of this technically is not due until January 21st. Ideally, you'll finish it by January 18th when the week is over. But again, I believe you can enroll in this class up until January 20th. And so that is why I'm not requiring it actually to be done until January 21st. So, and there isn't a grade for introducing yourself in Harmonize or for writing the article summary and checking with the key. Those are just useful things to do, and I hope you will choose to do them. But the syllabus quiz is worth 5 points. Okay. Then the following week, it begins with Martin Luther King on Monday, the holiday, but the week will then begin January 20th on Tuesday. We'll start with the first chapter. So we'll introduce social psychology. And during that week, I really want you to decide which article you want to lead. So you're going to look at, I think it's a good idea to skim all 15 articles and choose the one that you want based on your work schedule and what would be a good time for you to lead, and the article and your favorite article or one of your top 5 favorite articles. I absolutely need you to get into the discussion board and say which article you want by 11:59 on the last day of week 2, January 26th. But there's a huge advantage in doing it earlier because it's very much first come, first serve. And so you may go through and go, this is the article I want. And then you look on the discussion board and someone else has already requested it. So once someone puts in the discussion board, I want module 3, the article by, I don't know, Prade and whoever, then that becomes their article. So when you go to say which article you want, make sure you look at the discussion board and see which ones are already taken. So you can see the earlier you do this in the semester, the more choice you'll have. But it absolutely has to be done by January 26th. Okay. And then week 3 is the first week that you'll actually read an article. We're all going to read the same article and summarize it and submit it by February 2nd. So it's not until February that your first article submission will happen. And this article in Chapter 2, Social Cognition, we're all going to read the same article. We will discuss that article during week 4 between February 3rd and February 9th. So the person who chooses to lead the discussion of the social cognition article will have to post on February 3rd the video and in Harmonize that that summarizes the article. And then all this week, week 4, we'll be discussing the social cognition article that we read. In addition to discussing that article, you'll be reading chapter 3 on the self, and you'll be reading an article about the self and summarizing an article about the self. Now, when you go to read article number 2 about the self, you'll actually get a choice. And other than the very first article, article number 1, we're all reading the same article. After that, articles 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you always have a choice. There'll be 2 articles. You choose the one that you like the best. So from February 3rd to February 9th, we'll be discussing the social cognition paper. We'll be reading the self paper, the one that you choose, summarizing it and submitting that, and reading or watching the video about chapter 3, the self. Then week 5, February 10th to February 16th, we'll be discussing the 2 articles on the self, and you'll only participate in the discussion of the article that you chose. So if there still is, let's say there's 12 people in the class, it may be that about 6 of you choose one article and 6 choose the other. So you're having these discussions with about 6 people or so. It might be that one time, like lots of people choose one article and there's only 3 of you discussing it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes then it's even more interesting, I think. So you can see that each week we're discussing an article, or a lot of the weeks you're discussing an article that we read the prior week and submitted. You're reading a new article and submitting a summary of it, and you're reading the chapter in the book. And that sort of is the format that we use. Now, when it comes to week 6, you're not going to get a new article to read, because the following week we won't be discussing one, we'll be having the exam. So some of the weeks, there's a little bit less, you're only doing one of the things, but many of the weeks you're discussing last week's article, reading this week's article, summarizing this week's article, and listening to the lecture and reading the chapter in the book. Okay. The weeks where there are 2 different discussions going on, which is most of the weeks, all the weeks except when we're discussing article 1, you can you can participate in both threads if you want, and you get extra credit for participating in the other thread. So for article number 2, let's say that we're discussing February 10th to February 16th. Let's say you read the article, oh, I don't have the author's names down in front of me. Let's say you read an article, you read one of the articles. You can participate in the discussion of both of the articles, one for the actual points you get for discussing, and the other one for extra credit. So that's always an option too. Okay, then week 6, February 17th to the February 23rd, we'll be discussing the attitudes, behavior, and persuasion article, and you'll be reading chapter 8, but you won't get a new article to read and submit. And then February 24th to March 2nd is the exam. As I said, please don't wait till March 2nd to take it. That is just such a bad idea. And then the following week, week 8, you'll be summarizing article 4 and submitting it. We won't be discussing one yet because you didn't submit an article before. But then when we come to week 9, March 10th to March 23rd, we're back to discussing the article that you read the previous week, reading an article and submitting it for this week, and watching the lecture videos about the chapter and reading the chapter in the book. And that continues week 10. Week 11, we'll be discussing the article from chapter 11, but you don't get a new article. And then week 12 is the second exam. That's the Unit 2 exam that needs to be proctored. So you'll want to set up that proctoring situation early in the semester. Then week 13, you'll summarize Article 7 on groups. And then week 14, we'll discuss that article on groups as you're reading an article on liking and loving and reading the chapter on liking and loving. And then week 15, we'll be discussing the liking and loving, and you'll be learning about competition and cooperation. And then week 16, we'll have the final exam. So. All right, you can see here the syllabus quiz is worth 5 points. Each of these exams is worth 100 points. The article summaries, there were 10 points each. There's 8 of them for 80 points total. The discussion questions, you're allowed 1 freebie night or 1 freebie week where you don't have to do one. So 5 points times 7 gives you 35 points. The article discussions are at 10 points. There's 8 of them, so there's 80 points. And then you'll lead an article for 100 points. So the total that you could get is 600 points. In order to earn an A, you need at least 537 of the points. For a B, 477 to 536, and so on here. So for attendance, it's impossible to do the discussion questions or participate in the harmonized videos late, because we're doing a discussion. You'd be adding on at the end, and then no one can add to what you did to discuss it on. So the discussions have to take place during the week that they're due. The discussion questions have to be turned in before the discussions take place, or the leader won't be able to include it. So those cannot be turned in late. However, the summaries you can turn in late for a 5-point deduction. There are also lots of, and it's impossible to take the exam late. You'd have to have, like, basically for the whole week be in the hospital or something like that. So you really, if you know you're going to have a problem with the exam, you can always take it early. Just let me know and we can set that up. There's lots of things you can do for extra credit. You can earn up to 30 points of extra credit. You can participate in experiments through SONA systems. There'll be a link in the course that you'll be able to do that with. You can attend some approved campus events that have to do with social psychology. I'll post those in the announcement, so you'll know about those. You can summarize extra articles and participate in the class discussions on the articles that you didn't summarize. And that's like, because you have a choice each for many of the weeks, you can do both of them instead of just one and get extra credit for the one that you didn't do. Okay, if you stop showing up to doing any of the activities in the online course for at least 25% of the course, you've missed that much, and it's before the last day to withdraw from the class, I will or I could submit an administrative withdrawal on you. That is AW is better to have on your transcript than an F, but of course it would be better for you to withdraw and just have a W, because AWs are also used if there's disciplinary action. So if you stop showing up and you haven't withdrawn, I'll email you and go, ooh, you really probably want to withdraw from this class. All you need to do is just email the registrar's office telling them you want to withdraw. But if you don't do that and you don't do that, and you don't do that, and it's getting close to last day to drop the class, then I can do an AW. After the last day to withdraw from the class, I can't do an AW. So I can't wait to see if you waited to the last minute. So please communicate with me if you're planning to withdraw. Okay. I don't see any changes happening to the syllabus, especially because this is an online class, but if need be, it'll definitely be in the announcements and things like that. Of course, there's no policy for cell phone usage during class or computer usage during class or recording the lectures, because this is an online class. The next part has to do with plagiarism and dishonesty. Don't cheat. As a graduate student, we expect you to know what cheating is, and so don't do it. Email policy, I allow 48 hours for me to respond. This is the only class I'm teaching this semester. And so usually I will be checking way more. You'll get a response from me in less than 48 hours, but you'll definitely get it within 48 hours. The only exception to that is could potentially be that I think it's the second week of April, I'm going to Paris, and I may end up with some issues perhaps with the time difference. But even that, I think we'll be able, because I still think I'll be able to respond to you within 24 hours. But I put on here, give me at least 48. Much of this semester, I foresee me either being in the Boston area or in the San Francisco area. And when I'm in San Francisco, I'm 2 hours behind you. And when I'm in Boston, I'm 1 hour ahead of you if you're in Lawton, Oklahoma. So there may be some time things. If you notice me posting things really late at night or early in the morning, it's probably due to the time difference. Here's the ADA statement. Please, if you have ADHD or some other thing where you should get extra time to do the exam, I can only give you extra time if you've gone through our Office of Student Development and they tell me that the university says that you can get time and a half on the exams. As someone who's a parent to two children with ADHD, they're adults now, but two people with ADHD, I made sure when my kids were in college that they got time and a half just to make it a level playing field. And so if you have accommodation or you think you need one, please go to the Office of Student Development, spend the time to do the paperwork that they need. So for the rest of your time at Cameron, you'll get the accommodations that you deserve to have. Okay. So here is the course description. And I know so far this has gone longer than I wanted it to. And also it's rather boring going through all of these requirements and everything. But I want you to know that this is like one of my all-time favorite classes to teach. My area when I got my PhD in experimental psychology was social psychology. Most of my publications, or many of them, well, most are in social psychology. I love this area. Within social psychology, my area was groups, and within groups, it was group creativity. You know, how can we make groups be as innovative and creative as possible, and what that does for everything. I am just fascinated about prejudice and stereotyping and discrimination, and how do these things, and persuasion, how can you live in our lifetime and not want to know about persuasion? Interpersonal attraction, what could be more interesting than that? Obedience, conformity, social influence, group decision making. Like the topics that we cover in here are just so much fun, and they're just so interesting. And you know, most of the students, when they write their end of year evaluations or they send me an email when the class is over, that oftentimes they'll tell me, I ended up using what I learned in the class in this capacity or in that capacity. This course is not like, well, you're just doing it in the books and then it's over. Like, I really hope that you're applying all of this to your life, because it's got a lot of cool stuff in it. We will be using every single one of of the MSBS General Psychology Program objectives. Especially, well, all of them, but students will analyze and evaluate research principles in the behavioral sciences. Absolutely. You are going to dramatically improve how well you read research articles, because you're going to do 8 of them. And the difference between your first one and the last one is going to be pretty dramatic, unless you're already really good at it. But for some of you, this may be the very first class that you're taking as an MSBS student, and you didn't major in psychology as an undergrad, so you've barely done any of these research articles. You're going to see how quickly you get better at this. It's a really cool skill to develop. So you'll get really good at that. And we're going to be talking about the ethical principles, like how to apply all of this information in an ethical way, how to make our society more ethical by using and to do that, we may need to use some of these principles. And of course, we want to be able to apply this information to the real world, or sort of, I mean, it is interesting in and of itself, but applying it you know, seems so useful, and a shame if we don't make the world a better place. So. And I think that is it for going through the syllabus. Please feel free to email me with any questions you have, marydz@cameron.edu. And I look forward to watching your harmonized videos at the end of this, the end of this week, introducing yourselves and getting to know a little bit about each of you. It should be a good semester, I hope. All right, thank you.